Sports talk will never be the same again.
Seriously, Jeb, stop laughing.
I mean, have you heard this guy?
This is the Rob Mike Richards Show, brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy, on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
Oh, we are back. We're back big time. That was a great response last week, and I've got to rush into this show so quickly because we are absolutely jam-packed. I'm going to talk to Jimmy the Bag. I've been, telling you about handicapping and what we're going to do for the NFL, all sports, but this is week number 1 in the NFL, so we'll get to Jimmy the Bag. We've got Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network, formerly of CBS Sports. We're going to talk to Megan Mickelson-Reid. She is absolutely phenomenal. It's the first time I've got a chance to talk to her as the person doing the color here for the Flames. Her story is remarkable, but she might even be a better person because I think she's phenomenal. You're really going to enjoy this interview. And then we get to probably one of the best journalists that our country has ever had, Stephen Brunt, as he's got his brand new Made in the Hammer documentary about the 2025 Hamilton Tiger Cats. But I got to be honest, you don't have to be a Tiger Cat fan to enjoy this piece of art that he's going to put out that you're going to see this year and this season. So what a phenomenal show. Well, I've been bragging about this on the show for, a couple of weeks, but probably more than likely I mentioned even last year, because Jimmy the Bag, my friend, who's now been doing stuff with me when Mike Richards in the Morning became Raw Mike Richards. So this is like 7 or 8 years ago that Jimmy the Bag, top handicapper and one of my good friends, he's joined us now. Week number 1, NFL, buddy. What do you got going? Because you cook it.
Ooh, week 1 of the NFL season. Do we need anything else in life? Nothing. Not a family, not friends, not happiness, just NFL football, Mike. I have 19 week 1 bets, 13 futures. I'm investing heavily. I'm putting my family at great risk.
Well, again, I think a good move. You safety first, right? Here you go.
The Super Bowl pick, 2 of them for me. We'll start in the NFC at 20-1, Mike. The Los Angeles Rams to win the Super Bowl, to win the NFC West at 2-1, to go over 9.5 wins at -140, to beat the Houston Texans on Sunday, -2.5 at -115. I'm also on the under 44 in Rams Texans. We saw the toughest test the Philadelphia Eagles Super Bowl champions faced last year in the playoffs. It was the Los Angeles Rams. Matt Stafford in his 17th season is going to win the Super Bowl and ride off in his wheelchair into the sunset, Mike. This team is stacked. Puka Nacua. They had the highest graded wide receiving unit last season, and it's going to be even better. Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams replaces Cooper Kupp, Tutu Atwell returns, Kyron Williams, their running back, elite to start his career. Jared Verse could be Defensive Player of the Year, him and Braden Fiske. Verse led the NFL with 89 quarterback pressures in 2024. They bring in Poona Ford from the Chargers to stop the run. This team is ready to win the NFC, represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, and win the Super Bowl at 20-1, Mike.
Oh, that's huge value and very ballsy. What else do you got here? We got at least another minute, so let's squeeze this in.
The Baltimore Ravens. Everybody's given up on them. Everybody says they can't win the big game. When everybody gives up on a team, that's when I start getting very interested. This is the number 1 roster in the NFL. I'm on them to win the Super Bowl at +650. I'm on them to have over 11.5 wins at -130. And yes, I'm on them to beat the Buffalo Bills at Highmark Stadium in Orchard Park, New York, Sunday night. It could be the game of the year in week 1. This team should have beaten the Bills in the AFC divisional round. And on Sunday, they get their revenge. Rabenga, Mike. Rabenga.
Okay, I want to squeeze in one more. You got a Monday Nighter. I know you do. Don't hide from me.
Ooh, Monday Nighter. I'm on the first half under 21.5 at +100 and the full game under 44.5. Yes, JJ McCarthy's a question mark, but this this Flores-led defense of the Vikings is going to be very good. And we have, a new offensive coordinator, a new head coach, a new defensive coordinator in Chicago. I believe in Caleb Williams, but I think they'll be a little slow off the gate. I think this is an under. I think we're going to cash unders. The public bets overs, and we cash unders.
So you're telling me after all these bets, what's going to happen for us? Are we going to get something?
Oh man, I'm not gonna have to listen to my wife. I'm gonna be so rich. I'm gonna be so rich. I will sit back. I will sit back and wait to be served. That's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen.
That is the one and only Jimmy the Bag. Thanks for joining us here this morning, brother. You're the best.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
You are listening to Raw Mike Richards right here on Sportsnet 960, The Fan. DKI Calgary has done so much for this community. It's why they're part of the show. It's what they do. And what we're trying to do is help out with Puckapalooza, their huge 4-day tournament in May, the first weekend in May, as a matter of fact. And they have brought us something very special that we're doing each and every week, always in the first segment. But if you're interested in helping out DKI Calgary as their support of Ronald McDonald House Canada. That is the charity. The tournament is Puckapalooza. Go to puckapalooza.com if you want to find out more information and ways that you can donate directly. There's like 4 ways to do that. So right now, that is the positive side of that conversation. The other side is the DKI Calgary Disaster of the Week.
It's the sports disaster of the week.
And although this disaster wasn't necessarily just this week, it wasn't in the past 7 days. In fact, it's longer than that. But there's no question the disaster of the week is the Dallas Cowboys, more specifically Jerry Jones, more specifically the trading of Micah Parsons. Jerry Jones has a level of business acumen that has allowed him to be a $16 billion man. The franchise is worth $13 billion. So how in that brain does he manage to mess up a true generational difference maker? I'm not going to say Lawrence Taylor. A lot of people are using and throwing that term around just because of his domination from his particular position. And you trade him within the division? And you do it like literally just before the season starts? Why wouldn't this be done in the spring where you've had a lineup of suitors? The reason? His ego, which always gets in the way because Jerry's universe is Jerry's universe and we're just visitors. It is remarkable that he thought he could deal directly with that 26-year-old. He didn't want to deal with the agent. So that kind of put him off. That put his ego off. In this day and age, the 80-year-old something billionaire thinks he's going to deal directly with the 26-year-old guy? Jerry, it's not Kijiji. And because of that, and because of your ego, you have made yet another disastrous trade, which is why the Dallas Cowboys will never, ever, ever win a Super Bowl under Jerry's current command. When you don't have to answer to anybody, not a GM, not a president, this is what happens. And who really suffers? The Dallas Cowboys fans. So get used to it, because when it comes to the Lombardi Trophy, the only thing you'll be lifting are your tears and tumbleweeds. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network. I am sure he'll have some opinions on the Dallas Cowboys and more.
Raw Mike Richards will be right back. Brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy.
For over 40 years, Calgarians have trusted DKI Calgary when disaster strikes. From fires and floods to legendary hailstorms, our all-star team delivers rapid response and proven restoration excellence to residential and commercial customers. As the premier restoration provider in Calgary and Southern Alberta, we're the partner families, businesses, insurers, and property managers count on. When the unexpected happens, trust experience. Trust DKI Calgary, restoring homes, businesses, and peace of mind for more than 4 decades.
Hey Calgary, Ron Tarrant here, the voice and producer of The Raw Mike Richards Show. Each week, I create and produce this broadcast from my specially designed home studio right here in Calgary that Hush City Soundproofing built and created specifically for me. Dude, and this thing is awesome! These guys transformed an existing room of my house, making it the perfect quiet space I use every single day for creating top-tier entertainment you hear around the world daily on TV and radio. Check out my studio on their website at hushcitysp.com, along with countless other soundproofing and acoustic treatment projects they've tackled, like home theater rooms, curbing noisy restaurants, home office projects, all the way to corporate workspaces, and even acoustically treating stadiums. Hush City Soundproofing, creating sound solutions in Calgary and Western Canada as unique as they sound.
Your financial future deserves personalized support. At Cassock Wealth Management with CIBC Wood Gundy, we use a data-driven approach that takes the emotion out of investing to help you stay on track towards reaching your goals. Whether you're growing your portfolio, planning for retirement, or preserving your legacy, our experienced team can provide you with the customized solutions and trusted guidance you need to succeed. Call us at 403-508-3230 or visit our website, www.cassockwealthmanagement.com. Brought to you by Milan Kasich, investment advisor with CIBC Wood Gundy. CIBC Wood Gundy is a division of CIBC World Markets, Inc., a subsidiary of CIBC. And as we get ready for another NFL season, which, quite frankly, the bang for your buck in this league in the last, 4 to 5 years, but certainly in the last 3 years or so, and the television ratings would support this argument, has been just phenomenal. And speaking of phenomenal, our good friend Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network joins us here. How you doing, Clark?
Doing great. I'm doing phenomenally, apparently.
Yeah. And here's a little prediction. Here's the lead pipe lock of the week before the season even starts. I know who the number one star of the first week is before we even kick it off.
Tell me so I can put him on my fantasy football team.
The schedule maker.
Ah, yes. I knew him, and I've forgotten his name. And Mike, I forgot his last name. But anyway, I knew him in the NFL office because our members of our family actually worked there. My wife worked there, certainly for 24 years.
Wow.
And so, he does a great job, and they do it now in a pretty sophisticated way.
Well, I don't know how sophisticated it is when you take a look at, okay, let's start with the Lions and the Packers.
Right.
Let's. How about this one? It must have a little bit of a sense of humor too, considering that you have. Where did it go here? Why am I drawing a blank on that game now? Oh yeah, the Steelers and the Jets. The Steelers and the Jets.
Aaron Rodgers. Someone's
giggling.
Getting a big laugh. Yeah, it was like Lorne Michaels put that one together. The game I'm really interested in seeing, believe it or not, is the Browns and the Bengals. You know why? Bengals. What are they in the first 2 weeks? They can't win.
Yeah.
They're 1-11 under their head coach, Zach Taylor. They're 1-11 ever since he's taken over in the first 2 weeks. They've got a good team, but they had a good team last year. And I think they opened up against the Jets. Something they should have just rolled over. I've forgotten who it was. Maybe it was the Patriots. I think maybe it was the Patriots. And they lost. They just can't win those first 2 weeks. And it always puts them behind the 8 ball. So they're chasing.
Well, and you're going to waste, Joe Burrow, who each and every year, you take a look at the numbers, you take a look at the performance, like he is MVP caliber on a team that can't get out of its own way. And you know what? It's the NFL, Clark, as you know how this works. You only get this healthy guy for so long. There are times where he hasn't been healthy because he gets sacked so often. They might have completely blown this guy's chance to really be something.
Well, not yet, but because they were handicapped last year by a really bad defense, poor defensive performance. They've taken steps to improve that. They brought back T. Higgins. That was really good. I think they now have these playmakers around him. But is Chase Brown the answer to the running game? I don't know the answer to that. They didn't really have a running game after Mixon left, and that handicapped him. And you saw the number of touchdown passes he threw last year and number of yards that he gained in passing. It was because they were a one-dimensional team. And so they were in shootouts with everyone, partly because they had to score so many points to outscore their defense, which was giving a bazillion. So I think they could be an outside shot as an AFC threat. I'm not saying they're going to the Super Bowl, but I agree with you. Joe Burrow is just incomparable. I love watching him play. Plays on a bad team, but they did one year they made it to the Super Bowl, and you go, okay, could it happen again? It could with that quarterback, but keep in mind, we know what happened with Dan Marino. He went in his second year, he never came back.
That's exactly right. We're in conversation with Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network here on Raw Mike Richards on Sportsnet, The Fan 960. Looking at the Lions and the Packers, some interesting storylines. I was in Detroit during one of the preseason games, didn't go to the game. I was at a bar smoking cigars. Hey, go figure that one.
That's what you were smoking?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The other stuff I don't understand, and it stinks. So I just don't get it. I'm more of a Dean Martin type of guy, right?
I like that.
Yeah,
I do too.
Absolutely. And so people are like, did you see the game? It's preseason. I'm not going to the game.
Yeah.
So but the conversation in the bar was all about the coordinators. They're all about the new coordinators in Detroit saying, we know what we have on the field, but what do we have on the sidelines? To me, an interesting conversation.
No, it should be, especially on the offensive side. I mean, look what happened to Jared Goff before he got there. He was a guy that took the Rams to the Super Bowl, but they decided he wasn't good enough to get them over the top. So they traded him. They got Matthew Stafford, and they go to the Super Bowl, and they win again. But Jared Goff wasn't really anything but just sort of a holdover until they got somebody else, right? And then Jared Goff became Jared Goff, and suddenly he became a quarterback that say he's not elite, but he's pretty good. He's really good. And that team really rallied around him. That was with Ben Johnson as his offensive coordinator. Now, He's gone, and he's the head coach at Chicago. And, they've lost their defensive coordinator too. But I'm more interested to see the impact on offense and what happens there, because they could go up and down the field in a hurry. I don't know what's going to happen. I think that's a really good game to sort of look at as a litmus test. But I just am not sure about the Lions. And I think I'm looking elsewhere in that division for a champion, whether it's Green Bay or Minnesota. I'm looking elsewhere. And I told you, I think Chicago's an interesting team. I think it's a fascinating division.
The Packers, of course, will have Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
And, in the Jerry world, which doesn't, or the Jerry universe, which doesn't operate that way anywhere else. I mean, there's usually general managers, there's presidents. If Jerry doesn't want Micah Parsons there, he can just make that decision because it's his world, and away he goes. And I still look at it and say, and I'm surrounded at times by Cowboy fans, I just feel like as long as he's pulling those levers like the Wizard of Oz, I just don't think they ever win, Clark. I don't think they're ever going to win a championship with him. I don't.
They won't. I agree with you 100%. And I think Cowboy fans would too. But it's Jerry's ball club, Jerry's toys. That's what he's going to do. He's going to keep them and take them home. And the Micah Parsons thing is disturbing because you don't get rid of elite players. You just don't. You try whatever you can to get rid of, to keep elite players. And I heard what was said in the aftermath of this about his behavior and this sort of thing. That shouldn't preclude you keeping him. And they got, 2 first-round draft picks and a good defensive tackle, but this guy's a difference maker, and you don't trade Lawrence Taylor. You just don't. And
I agree. In every sport, that makes complete sense to me. Like someone, when they're saying, well, what do you pay money for? Well, it depends on the sport you're talking about, but if I'm looking at baseball, what do you do in October?
Yeah, that's right.
I need someone who is I don't care about closing in July. I don't care about the guy who runs up, his batting average, home runs, with stolen bases. If you're a no-show, when it really counts, which is why I say the Leafs aren't going anywhere. They cannot get by a second round. I don't want to hear that story. And that's why when you start talking about the Buffalo Bills, it's like, okay, here we go again, part 4 or 5. They start off against the Ravens, which is another banger of a matchup.
Yeah, it's a great one. That's a great one.
It's a great one, Clark, but you can't even talk about, the moment you mention the Bills, someone's going to start talking about the Chiefs. And there's a reason for that. And I get that conversation.
Yeah, because you can't get over them in the playoffs. You can beat them during the regular season. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you play them. Buffalo, Kansas City, you can't beat them. And as I said, I'm really upset. Always have been upset about that game last year. I just felt there was something really weird about that game, and I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
First down. I know it's not first down. Okay, tush push. There's another first down. Well, it's not a first down. Well, what's going on here? And I feel for Josh Allen because there's another guy. We talk about Burrow. I want Josh Allen to get to a Super Bowl, just one, at least one. Give him the chance to experience that, and give the rest of the country a chance to watch how good he is. He's an extraordinary quarterback. We talk about Mahomes, rightly so, because he's always there. Everyone sees him. Super Bowl every year. About time you see somebody else. And so when you saw Joe Burrow, you go, wow, this guy's pretty good. And then you see Josh Allen is an MVP for a reason. Lamar Jackson's the same thing. He can't get over the hump. And you say it's one player. Yeah, but it's the most important position on the field. And 2 years ago, Baltimore should have won that game in in Baltimore. They're playing the Chiefs. But they decided they weren't going to make Lamar Jackson. They're going to turn him into a pocket passer, even though the Chiefs' one weakness was the running game. So what? Now we're going to beat him with a pass. And I know about the fumble at the goal line and everything, but that's the same sort of thing. So there's certain individuals, and I think those three guys, Jackson, Allen, and Burrow, you want to see them in the Super Bowl.
I certainly do. The biggest problem I have with Buffalo is there's not much more Josh Allen can do. When you watch those games, he's right. He's basically Superman, he can't play on defense. So otherwise, it's like, I'm looking at those coordinators, like they don't have a huge margin of error simply because you've got a Baltimore, you've got a Kansas City. I'm just curious before I let you go. Sometimes, you take a look at the, some of the futures bets and you show all the people who believe certain people will win the divisions. And it's aside from my difference from all of them, I do think Washington can take Philadelphia.
So do I.
That'd be the one. But I don't know if we're seeing a team come out of nowhere. I don't know if there's a dark horse necessarily because those, sort of 6 teams that we talk about all the time are really, really good. Maybe not great, but there's a lot of very, very good in this league, and I don't know where that comes from. I hear people talking about Tampa Bay, but I'm like...
Are you talking about the AFC or just in general?
Just in general. I don't know if there's one necessarily that I have a really good feeling like this is the year. I don't know if I found that or not.
Well, so some people are promoting the Denver Broncos, saying they're a threat to the Chiefs in that division. Maybe. And Bo Nix versus Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to take Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly.
And their defense is good, and they do play the Chiefs tough. Possibility, I saw someone pushing the Rams this year. I think I'm not on that. I don't know who wins that division. Other people think Arizona might take a step forward. But I think Houston's got a chance. Now, they're not coming out of the weeds. I mean, people know about Houston, but I was really disappointed with the quarterback's play last year. I thought Stroud had been better. Yeah. He should be better, but that coaching staff is good. I think that there's a really good culture around that team. I like them, and I think this division they can win and should win. So that may be a team, but I agree with you. I mean, I look at the NFC, and I say, okay, we like Philadelphia, right? I do like Washington. I think Washington can and will win that division this year. But for another team to come out of the woodwork, I don't know. You're taking a long shot. You really believe the Bears could? No, I don't. I think they'll be improved. But where's that team going to be? And that's a good question. I think the AFC's much more wide open. The NFC is the Philadelphia Eagles and Washington Commanders in a cast of hundreds.
Being a Ducks fan, of course, I've seen every down that Bo Nix has played. And someone said, gee, Mike, he seems to play with a lot of maturity. I said, yeah, he's 40.
Yeah. He was in my high school class. We graduated together.
His kids are watching him play. Yeah, he's got some
I like him.
maturity.
I like him, but he's a second-year quarterback. And I've always thought, boy, Denver's missing that running game. Maybe they've got it this year. I know they've got, they keep changing running backs. But I trust Sean Payton. And at the end of the year last year, I thought they're a dangerous team. You don't want to really run into them. But let's see what happens. But I agree with your philosophy. Yeah, you'd go 6-7 teams and everyone else.
A great first week and looking forward to it. And of course, our good friend Clark Judge joined us here this morning from the Talk of Fame Network. Thanks so much, Clark.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Mike. Thanks.
Raw Mike Richards will be right back. Brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy. Hey Calgary, Ron Tarrant here, the voice and producer of The Raw Mike Richards Show. Each week, I create and produce this broadcast from my specially designed home studio right here in Calgary that Hush City Soundproofing built and created specifically for me. Dude, and this thing is awesome! These guys transformed an existing room of my house, making it the perfect quiet space I use every single day for creating top-tier entertainment you hear around the world daily on TV and radio. Check out my studio on their website at hushcitysp.com along with countless other sound soundproofing and acoustic treatment projects they've tackled, like home theater rooms, curbing noisy restaurants, home office projects, all the way to corporate workspaces, and even acoustically treating stadiums. Hush City Soundproofing, creating sound solutions in Calgary and Western Canada as unique as they sound.
For over 40 years, Calgarians have trusted DKI Calgary when disaster strikes. From fires and floods to legendary hailstorms, our all-star team delivers rapid response and proven restoration excellence to residential and commercial customers. As the premier restoration provider in Calgary and Southern Alberta, we're the partner families, businesses, insurers, and property managers count on. When the unexpected happens, trust experience. Trust DKI Calgary, restoring homes, businesses, and peace of mind for more than 4 decades.
This is the Raw Mike Richards Show, brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy, on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
And for those that have been asking, Richards, okay, I see the sausage fest that you have each and every week. There's no women, and I said, so okay, here we go. Just not to attention. There is a woman on Raw Mike Richards. Everyone calm down. Please be careful. It is Megan Mickelson-Reid joining me here this morning. And I got to thank you so much for being here. And we will talk about your accomplishments, but maybe the greatest thing is just how kind you've been. You know, people say, you know, when you're dealing with people, what's it like? I said, well, you can tell by the emails. you can tell by how you correspond. And I'm like, okay, I know that she's a good person. So welcome to the show. Thrilled.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I was excited when you did email me and ask me. So happy to be here.
You know, the accomplishments of, you know, and sometimes again, it's a very hot topic sometimes when you talk about women in sports, you talk about professional leagues. But I kind of go back to, you know, you're a St. Albert girl and you look across the country where all these great athletes come from. But it's the generations of those women, quite frankly, girls back in the day when hockey starts to come into almost our vernacular of understanding that, yeah, women and girls, they like hockey and they can play at a high level. You know, being in the 70s, when that came out, I went, you can't have a hockey league with girls. Guys were like, oh, ew, your girlfriend plays hockey, to the point where we are now. It's a conversation amongst athletes more than it is one gender or another. So the Cassie Campbells of the world, Haley Wickenheiser, who've been on my show for years, you know, you have a conversation about athletics, and that has more to do with the mental capacity. It has more to do with the wiring with anything else, because I'm sure when you're at the University of Wisconsin and the helmet goes on, you're not thinking anything else but taking your man out, making sure you do what you did in practice, and winning the game. And to me, there's no difference between men and women at that point.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, and just going back to what you just said, thinking back to the 70s of, oh, my girlfriend plays hockey. I think for me growing up, and even when I was in junior high or high school, that was probably still the mentality. I was always the only girl playing on all boys teams. You know, I played boys hockey, hitting hockey up until midget, when the guys were, you know, 6 feet, 6'2", 200 pounds, just a little bit too big. And, you know, you're getting kind of run through the boards. But, you know, I think for me, I developed a very thick skin, you know, growing up playing boys hockey. And I was always just, in my mind, I had to kind of approach it as I was, you know, just another player on the ice. So I think that, you know, that's the way it's been for me. That was always the mentality that I had. And maybe, you know, that's why that's the approach that I take to even what I do now. You know, I'm one of the only female broadcasters, but, you know, I'm another person in the room that, you know, I know what I'm talking about. And I don't see myself as kind of male or female or anything like that. But, you know, I agree with you. The wiring is very similar. And I've been really lucky. I've had the opportunity to attend events and, you know, chat with a lot of guys that have won championships and played at really high levels, you know, guys like Sidney Crosby, and, you know, did an event with Mark Scheifele a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, there's a sort of a special kind of, I know we were chatting about this, but kind of a switch that you can turn off and on. You know, I loved playing hockey. I loved performing. I loved being under pressure, and I loved the adrenaline. And I think that that's why I love broadcasting so much now, because you get a lot of that in that world too.
We're in conversation with Megan Mickelson-Reid here on Raw Mike Richards on Sportsnet 960 The Fan. It's interesting how, and again, this is a conversation I've had with many guys former athletes who go into the broadcast booth. They feel that excitement when the microphone goes on. They know what the other players are going through on the ice or on the field or on the court at that time. Because if you don't have that, Megan, it's the same thing as not having it in sport. I wouldn't want my teammate who's not jacked up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want someone who's just sort of rolling their eyes, waiting for the game to be over. And I think that when you take that kind of enthusiasm, it must feel like, quite frankly, it's just like when you put the uniform on. I think it must feel a very similar way for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I consider myself very lucky to have pretty much retired and rolled right into my job with Sportsnet and doing the color commentary. So it was almost like I gave everything I had to give from a physical standpoint, but I think that love and that passion for the game, maybe I am a little bit of an adrenaline junkie in that, I love calling hockey games just as much as I loved competing and playing. So it's been a really kind of smooth and seamless transition into that role. And I really do love it. And I get super jacked up for games. It's funny. Derek Wills, my broadcast partner, he knows I treat game days as a broadcaster like I used to treat them as a player. Like, you get up. Now I work out before we go to morning skate. You go to morning skate, you do all the things. I have my prep. I do my prep. I have lunch. I take my pregame nap, pregame coffee, all the things. So it's kind of neat how many similarities that they are. I do think, as a female broadcaster, you have to be careful because, the men's game, there are differences between the men's game and the women's game. And so that's something that I'm very conscious and very aware of as I'm calling games. What were the differences that I can relate to, and maybe some of the things that I can't, like fighting. That just isn't a part of the women's game, really. So that's something that I definitely keep in mind. I think that, I love the physicality. I love that part of the game. I think that it, within reason, it definitely has a place in the game. So I think the fact that I grew up playing boys hitting hockey, maybe that's kind of where that comes from. But yeah, I love calling games and just the adrenaline of that. Like you said, it's very similar to playing.
Well, Megan, I also think that this year for the Flames, as Flames fans are, looking at how it ended last year with, Dustin Wolf being, this guy who, at one point when you look at it, didn't, wasn't necessarily going to translate into a big time pro. And then you see all the other pieces slowly coming into place that, again, they were probably picked to win so few games last year that they started playing with a little bit of house money. And then you started talking about the playoffs, and people were like, is this really a thing? Well, I think now when, with Ryan, what he wants to do, I see Dave Lowry just came back. We a familiar face we all like to see. And with Connie in control, I'm very excited to see where this is going to go, because I think that carryover from how it finished last year is kind of filtering into how we're going to see, I hope, in October. I'm just curious, some of the things that you'll be looking for, some of the players that you think might maybe make that step up this year.
Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest reasons why they had the success that they had last season that wasn't expected at all was just the changes in the culture and the environment. And, I've played on a lot of teams. I've had a lot of coaches, leadership groups, different dynamics within different teams. So, over time and over a career, and you get a pretty good sense of, is this a solid group? Is there really good leadership? And so I think they've done a fantastic job. And, that's from Craig Conroy all the way down, Ryan Huska. And, I'm not tooting their horns or anything, but I think they've done a really good job of ensuring that there's a standard, there's an expectation of, what they want the culture and the environment to be like. And so, they came out and they played as a team. So, I think that's why they had the success that they did last season. And, the guys in that room, you can tell that they want to win. Like, you don't go out there to just kind of go through the motions. And you look at the pieces that were there last season, and I mean, almost all those guys are coming back. So I think that there's going to be that same standard, that same expectation that, hey, we're here and we're here to win. And then you couple that now with, Dustin Wolf, the season that he had last year, there's obviously going to be a lot of pressure on him and the expectations. But, from what we know of him and his personality, he's going to be just fine. He's going to handle that, really, really well. And I actually think that it will make him better. Like, he seems to me like one of those players that the more the pressure, the more he's going to show up. Another guy that I'm keeping an eye on, and, I was lucky I did the last Flames game for TV for Sportsnet, and having the opportunity to watch all the young guys. So a guy like Zane Parekh, like him coming in, and it's very obvious that, last season training camp, big disappointment. So the expectations of him and just of himself, how much he's learned and grown, I think he could come in and be a really dangerous, dynamic player. Another guy, obviously, that's really exciting is Matt Coronado. Just the season that he had last year, signing that massive extension. So, I think from my viewpoint anyways, like, you look at the leadership group they have and, Michael Backlund, Blake Coleman, Nazem Kadri, Mackenzie Weegar, you have those guys that have, kind of been there, done that. And then you have these like young, dynamic, really exciting pieces. So, I think it could be another season where they come in and they exceed everyone's expectations again. But I think the exciting thing is that, they could be a really fun team to follow and to watch if they get off to a good start.
Well, I love your comment about the culture, because to me, when you're in those dressing rooms, when you're around other teams and you look at why there's, why is there failure? And generally you just look upstairs and it filters all the way down through, where you see disconnect, you don't see the continuity, therefore you've lost the passion, and that nothing they do really is like a puzzle that fits. You've been on enough teams to know when you're in a situation where the culture just isn't fitting. I think when Coronado got that extension, to me, that is a sign to other players who may want to play in Calgary that there is a culture here that you want to be a part of, beyond just living in what I think is the best city in all of Canada. It all fits and makes people want to play there. And as you know, that's a big part of being in a team, because you're in a situation, in a culture that works.
Yeah, and there's that. To me, it's very evident that there's a sense of accountability and showing up and, just the work ethic and what's expected, what's involved. But then they seem like they have a lot of fun too. Like, we travel with the team on the road and they seem like a group that truly enjoys being around one another. So when you have a group that you're sitting, next to a player in the dressing room and you want to run through a brick wall for the player sitting next to you, that goes a really long way when it comes down to those moments in games where it really, really matters. So I think that they've established that. And then there's a really, I think the consistent messaging and communication from the coaching staff, how well they work with the leadership group. I think that consistency, that's there. That's been, really important as well. So, I'm excited to call the games. So I think fans should be excited to follow the team as well. Fan or not fans, I think this is going to be a fun team to follow around the league.
Well, you did a great job today. It was just fabulous. I understand why my good friend Carrie Elliott, get Megan on the show. Get Megan on the show. Yes, I absolutely loved what you did today. It was so awesome. And there's one more thing I need to ask you a favor. I didn't realize that Jason LeBarber was the goaltending coach. So
yes,
could you,
Barbs.
Could you ask Barbs? He borrowed $28 from me a while ago.
Okay.
Could you get that for me? Is that?
I can do my best. I'll do my best.
Well, yeah. Just fight him, because you said sometimes you don't fight in girls. He'll lose. If you want to take him on, you can take Barbs. You can tell him I said that too. Hey, thank you so much. You take care, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to you again sometime.
No, thanks for having me.
Raw Mike Richards will be right back. Brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy.
What can you do to defend your community from devastating wildfires like Jasper? Make it rain. Introducing the mobile Rainstream Tower, giving you the power to create rain when and where you need it, in minutes. Each mobile tower can soak an area of up to 10 football fields in size, creating a wall of water, protecting lives, homes, and the environment. Rainstream. we make it rain.
For over 40 years, Calgarians have trusted DKI Calgary when disaster strikes. From fires and floods to legendary hailstorms, our all-star team delivers rapid response and proven restoration excellence to residential and commercial customers. As the premier restoration provider in Calgary and Southern Alberta, we're the partner families, businesses, insurers, and property managers count on. When the unexpected happens, trust experience. Trust DKI Calgary, restoring homes, businesses, and peace of mind for more than 4 decades.
This is the Raw Mike Richards Show, brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy, on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
As I've been told by people in the CFL, in the business, as much as I was in Calgary for all those years, and people like Jim Barker would come up and say, I know you're a dirty, stinking Ticat fan. He goes, you don't fool me for 1 second. And it's how you're born and raised, I suppose. And someone who knows all about that, my good friend Stephen Brunt, the new series, it's 4 parts. It's called Made in the Hammer, Inside the 2025 Ticats. He joins me now. So great to see your face, Stephen. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Hey, good to see you. Of course, Barker worked for Barker worked for every team in the league, as far as I know, right? So
yes, he did.
I believe he briefly was wearing black and gold,
which I loved. I said, "Boy, but you sure look good in those colors. Sure look good in the black and the gold." And looking at what happened on Labor Day, and Calgary took care of business, and they made sure that it wasn't going to be close. But the other games were phenomenal. But of course, the pain and the dichotomy of my family. So there you have my father, who was taught by Ivor Wynn. My dad said, boy, you know you're old when they name a stadium after your professor. And so, of course, myself, my brother David, and there I am all with the black and gold. And there's disrespectful Scott. There's Scott wearing his blue and his son's wearing blue. So every time one thing would happen on one side of the table would be happy. Then, of course, the bombs went off. And my wife's like, you don't have to talk like that. I said, not now. And so, of course, the way the game ended, it was like the most painful on one side, the most glorious on the other. But isn't that, in some ways, life as a Ticat fan, where it's the feast or famine? It has been since I've been going to games. 1972, I believe, was the first time. 71, 72. And it feels like we've always had this attachment. If you're a Ticat fan, you're more than excited with the great Paul Osbaldiston moments or the Chuck Ely moments, but we also get a lot of those yesterday. It's part of being that fan base.
Yeah, well, at least they're still in first place, so that's better than some years, right? Like there have been some years on Labor Day when they were done, and you only the Labor Day game is all you had left is beat the Argos on Labor Day. At least don't give us something. So they're still in first place. They're still in control in the East. They haven't won a Grey Cup in a long time. He's mentioned 71, 72. So I go back to 67 as a little kid, but you count them on one hand, right? 67, 72, 86, 99, waiting, right? So, so in relative terms, this is pretty good so far, even though that was an unbelievable, 2 defensive coordinators there, on both sides. You're going, what? Like, how can that happen? How can that possibly happen? One team, go right down the field, and then the other team go right down the field. And of course, then the 1 second thing on the sideline was bananas. Back when I was neutral, sitting in the press box, I said, well, you cheer for the story, right? And that's, a hell of a story. But now I'm, working with my hometown team and working with the Ticats. I would have definitely preferred a Ticat victory, but there's a lot of season still to go.
There is, and when I look at this ownership, I'm good friends with Jim Lawson. He's a very good friend, and Scotty Mitchell, of course. At one point, when I first moved back from Calgary to Toronto to do TSN, Scott was living right across the street at that time when I'm in Leaside. There he was. Of course, we all know his dad, Billionaire Bob, or the caretaker, whatever you want to call him. It really has brought back a time of stability. I was there when they were begging for people on the street when Ivor Wynn to not go under, these almost like telethons, and so you come to this point. It is seemingly more corporate, but it's still, the CFL is never not that far away from playing without a net. How do you look at this particular ownership?
Well, they've been, Bob was the savior. There's no 2 ways about it. Like, the team was literally bankrupt, and before that had been scuffling along. Braley paid the bills for a while. Like, paid the bills everywhere for a while. They had community ownership. They tried community ownership again. That didn't work. The city seemed to have kind of said, fine, let him go, let him die. So, and then Bob came in, and he didn't have to do it. And I know Bob a bit, but I'm not. It's not like he's ever said to me, "Boy, I regret this." But there has got to be times over this whole stretch where he said, I'm nuts, right? Like, why am I throwing money at this thing? And we still haven't won one. Like, they owe him one for sure. But no, he has been. If they were going to put up statues to people in Hamilton, they should put up one of Bob Young, because he's the reason that team exists. And not just that, he's built a really, really good organization. And I would have said that even before I started working with their content people, who are absolutely world class, by the way, like unbelievably good as any people I've worked with in television. So they're fantastic. But they've tried all everything you could try to win a Grey Cup. They've hired the list of coaches, the team presidents, general managers. They've spared no expense in terms of the stuff you can spend money on in the CFL outside the cap. And they brought in players. They got Bo Levi there now, obviously, but they've been through, went through a lot of quarterbacks. If you're a fan, what do you want? You want an owner that wants to win as badly as you want to win. And if you're a Ticat fan, the one thing you know about Bob Young is that he wants to win as badly as you want to win. Now he's won with the soccer team's done great, so give him credit for Forge. But he has absolutely put his money and his heart on the line for the Ticats, and as a Hamiltonian, I can't thank him enough for what he's done. And I say that's me as a Ticat fan and as a guy who lives in the city, because the city's a better place when the Ticats are on the go.
Oh yeah. We're in conversation, by the way, with Stephen Brunt here on Sportsnet 960, The Fan, Raw, Mike Richards. The series is called Made in the Hammer. Now, when I was at Y95, it's sometimes the term the hammer. So that's like, in the 96, 97, 98 in there somewhere. Because growing up, that wasn't a phrase I heard. The hammer to me was something that came much later. Do you have a definitive answer on when this happened?
Well, it definitely is not, that was not what we called it when I was a kid, for sure. Growing up, and as a kid who grew up on, West 28th Street on the mountain in Hamilton, we never called it that. We also never called it the Labor Day Classic. It was just the Labor Day game that, got branded at a certain point as the Labor Day Classic. So, it's sort of like, Newfoundland, my other home, is everybody referring to it as the Rock. And I'm not sure everybody in Newfoundland ever referred to it as the Rock. I think it's almost like a branding exercise as well. But, look, the city is different. It's a different city than the one I grew up in. It used to be really a steel town, and tens of thousands of guys were working, men and women working in those steel companies, DeFasco and Stelco. And, that was absolutely the other businesses that, were attached to steel. Heavy industry was the whole thing there. And, on your street, like I could have gone down the block I lived on and, look where the dads worked on the street. Most of them worked in the steel companies. It's not like that anymore, right? It's, there's a lot of things going on. Steel has shrunk in terms of employment. It's not as important as it once was. Heavy industry is not as important as it once was. You got a world-class university. You've got all kinds of other things going on there. And you got a bunch of people from Toronto who moved there because the houses are cheaper and really nice. There's all these great neighborhoods. So, but I think people kind of want to keep alive the idea of, the lunch bucket town, the hard hat town, the blue collar working class town, and down in the East End where the stadium is, like that's still what that is, right? Like that neighborhood is what it's always been. It's your myth, right? It's not who you are, it's who you want to believe you are. And I'm a guy from Hamilton. I never worked in a steel company. But I believe in my heart that we're a little bit different than the guys up the road.
Well, and it's you make a great point. I was surprisingly down in Detroit like about 3 weeks ago. I had to get Jeff Lumby back home to France because he got stranded by Air Canada. So I'm in Detroit, and I didn't realize it fell on a preseason game. I had no idea, because preseason to me, when the starters play or don't play at all, it's not of a huge interest to me. It's more for an exercise for coaches. So I wasn't really paying attention. So we're sitting there and we're talking, and the people were just wonderful. The people of Detroit were just mind-blowingly fantastic. I don't know how else to put it. And they were so sensitive about their town, saying, Are you having a good time? Would you come back? Like, you could see it was sort of a thing. And they said, I said, I love it. And I said, in the same way that I like going to Buffalo, in the same way that I have a great love for Hamilton. And she said, well, what do you think the common denominator is? They're cities that work. They're working people. Now, maybe not in the same way as going to Stelco and going to DeFasco and going to all those other places, but it's still a working city. And I find that people who come from those kinds of places, or in our case here in Canada, it's Regina, these farming communities, these people that show up from all over the prairies. It's got that same mentality, and I don't know how you don't fall in love with that, because the chrome and the glass and the high rises and the condos, yeah, I get all that, but there's no, it's like a tactile thing almost. It's what you can touch. Toronto, of course, that's a completely other issue, another topic. But Hamilton still has that feel of sitting beside a guy whose face is painted, and he's sitting beside probably his mom. There's a good chance it's not his wife. It could be his mom. And they've been going to games since, 1970 something. And there's something special about that.
Yeah, no, like it's still there. No, that's still there. You're right. And you're right about the Buffaloes and the Detroits, Pittsburgh to a degree. Buffalo, there's a real kinship with Buffalo, especially because, I know they have the Sabres there, but the sense that, the football team it's all about the Bills in Buffalo, right? And it's, Buffalo, like Hamilton, has all these cool things that people never look at. They have amazing architecture and beautiful neighborhoods and great restaurants and all that stuff, which Hamilton does too. But people think of it, well, it's, dirty old Buffalo, right? Industrial town. And Hamilton's, exactly the same way. And, if you grew up in one of those places, you're used to people looking down their nose at you, right? Like that, or you feel like that. You have a chip on your shoulder. And that's part of what drives sports rivalries. I'm just working on the second episode of this series, and one of the themes is that, that rivalry with Toronto, which is a one-way rivalry now. Like, it's not, no one in Toronto cares, I don't think.
No.
But in Hamilton, you grew up saying, this is where, this is who we are, and we're kind of honest working people, and, those guys up the road are not us. And, they may lap us, lap the field in all kinds of other ways, but come play football against us, and we won't have, Joe Theismann, or we won't have Doug Flutie, or we won't have Anthony Davis, but our honest working football players will kick your ass. And, and it was about being, like, who's the most famous football player in Hamilton history? It's probably Angie Mosca. Of
course.
Who took a guy out of a Grey Cup game with a dirty hit, right? Like, and we loved him for it. Like, that was our guy. And that's about, I say, kind of about mythology, and it is about family stuff. My mom was, a crazy Ticat fan. It's the only thing, only sport she cared about, but she cared about it a lot. And it was all about, and part of it was us saying, hey, again, we may not have this, we may not have that, but we got this thing here. And when you come to East End of Hamilton, and come to our football field, and as a fan too, by the way, like, it used to be in the stands there when Toronto fans showed up en masse like they used to. You're intimidated. Sort of, if you're a visiting fan, you go to Buffalo for an NFL game, it's intimidating.
Yes,
and Hamilton was like that. And again, I don't condone violence, but it got violent every once in a while.
Part of the charm, as they say, part of the charm. Thank you so much. And thank you for doing this documentary. I mean, certainly for us as Ticat fans and my entire family, I mean, we'll be glued to every episode. I love when the CFL and ownership, takes that kind of accountability to tell the story, to give that message, because the NFL, they're really good at it. I mean, the sizzle to the steak, they know this stuff. So I think this kind of stuff is important, Stephen.
Well, and I'm going to say, like, they don't have to do this, right? Like, the games are on TSN. They don't have to do this stuff. But for them to kind of tell their own story and invest in telling their own story at a time when kind of legacy media, isn't doing it anymore. Like, go to a press box now and, count the empty seats, right? There's not a lot of people there telling these stories, especially for the CFL. Mm-hmm. So for the Ticats to take it on, not just to do it, but to do it right, and again, this is with or without my participation, they deserve a ton of credit, from the fans, but also from the league, like, this is your own NFL films. Yeah. So, everybody, I think, and I think if you watch this stuff, you don't have to be a Ticat fan necessarily, although it helps.
No, of course not. It said, and I don't think at any point in NFL films would you hear a name like, and it was caught by Wally Zatilny. I'm sorry? what name is that?
Wally's
one of my best.
Where you are, Wally, I miss you.
Stephen, thanks so much for this morning. Always appreciate it.
Yeah, pure pleasure, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Raw Mike Richards will be right back. Brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy.
For over 40 years, Calgarians have trusted DKI Calgary when disaster strikes. From fires and floods to legendary hailstorms, our all-star team delivers rapid response and proven restoration excellence to residential and commercial customers. As the premier restoration provider in Calgary and Southern Alberta, we're the partner families, businesses, insurers, and property managers count on. When the unexpected happens, trust experience. Trust DKI Calgary, restoring homes, businesses, and peace of mind for more than 4 decades.
New Vista Homes has been listening to homeowners, trade partners, and employees. Listening to take a good thing and make it better. That's why they're excited to unveil something big this spring. The gift of new options, new prices, new floor plans. Everything to make your experience with New Vista Homes even more enjoyable. New Vista Homes. Excitement is building. Learn more at newvistahomes.com.
When it catches your eye around Calgary, chances are we made it. Modern Plate and Label manufactures industrial labels and decals, stainless steel valve tags, engraved lamicoids for electrical, plumbing, and industrial needs. With a dedicated commitment to quality service at competitive prices, we soar above the competition and strive for perfection. Locally creative, locally manufactured. Visit modernplateandlabel.com today.
This is the Raw Mike Richards Show, brought to you by Cassock Wealth Management, CIBC Wood Gundy, on Sportsnet 960 The Fan.
Welcome back. It's Stephen Brunt. He's just brilliant. Very good friend over the years, but I also recognize that he's probably one of the better journalists that this country's ever produced, and a marvelous job as well. Raw Mike Richards broadcasting from the CIBC Wood Gundy studios, thanks to Milan Kasich. We are very pleased to be back. And also, as you heard Jimmy the Bag with some great picks off the top, now it's time for Richie's Picks. By the way, there'll be a podcast very soon that supports this called Raw Mike Richards Picks and Props. So are we going to make some picks and props? Absolutely. And for that, I am putting on the smart glasses. Look at me. So smart. I look like Tommy Clements. Well, I think so. So everyone shut up. Here we go. I'm going to start with the Commanders against the awful Giants. Yeah, I get it's Russell Wilson, and they're probably just waiting for the Jackson Dart era. So I am actually going to take a spread here. So the Commanders, currently I have it at -5.5. I'm taking that. Jaden Daniels, I do not see the kind of regression that people are talking about. I don't see necessarily what happened to C.J. Stroud. I don't think that happens. So I'll take Jaden Daniels for over 225 passing, and I'm going to take him for over 40 yards rushing. If you're going by the numbers, that's a 4.92. Taking a look at the Dolphins and the Colts. The Colts, it's going to be Danny Dimes. Seriously. I'm going to take Tyreek Hill for 60 yards. That is receiving yards, of course. Jalen Waddle for 50 yards. That pays at 2.53. And then finally, the Texans and the Rams. You heard Jimmy's got a big pick on the Rams. For me, I'm just going to take Kyron Williams, rushing over 68.5 yards. And also Nick Chubb. Yeah, Nick Chubb, 42.5 yards, because I think both are going to try to establish some running. Yeah, even though we obviously know who the receivers are in the Rams, and they got a lot of it. But that pays at 3.73. So that 7-leg same game parlay pays 46.5 times your money, almost 50 times your money. Thank you, smart glasses. You never fail. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us here this morning. It was a magnificent show, so packed and filled with information. Jimmy the Bag makes his debut and did a great job. We also had Clark Judge from the Talk of Fame Network, formerly of CBS Sports. Megan Mickelson-Reid, I don't know what to tell you, but you got lucky, Calgary, having someone like that in your town. And you know what? Calgary tends to make great decisions, and they certainly did with Megan. And congratulations, Flames, on finding her as well, because she's been a real find. And then Stephen Brunt talking about his documentary, Made in the Hammer, the 2025 Hamilton Tiger Cats. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Those pics will be going out as well. And don't forget to subscribe to all your major platforms when it comes to a podcast, because we're on them. We'll see you next week. Love it. Thanks so much.
The Raw Mike Richards Show. Executive producer, Ron Tarrant. For sponsorship inquiries, contact pureproduction@live.ca. Catch up on previous episodes and stream The Raw Mike Richards Show now, wherever you get your podcasts.